Alrighty, I think we are good. Yes, it has the image. Yes, yes! I think we are live. If we're not live, I'm gonna be pissed. If we're not live, I know who to blame. My heart and my soul for doing it wrong. Okay, that's good enough. Wow, I have 12 followers on Twitch. I had no idea. Cool, I guess. Thanks to everyone who's done that, as well as a couple subscribers on YouTube, which I know are out there, but I haven't seen. Okay, so today is a science fiction double feature featuring a short story by Isaac Asimov, which is on request from Rob from YouTube. Um, Excellent taste, by the way, Rob. This is also one of my favorites, as well as a kind of spooky story called BLIT, B-L-I-T, by David Langford, which, hey, yeah, it's a it's a short story for sure. Um, it spooks. The first time I read it, it spooked the heck out of me for sure. Um, it definitely made me feel things, and not in a in an exciting way, but not just the first time you read, like, it's kind of like the first time you read a or watch a story about like creatures in mirrors. You're like absolutely petrified that they're like, when you're young anyway, that, oh my gosh, something might come out of the mirror and eat me. It messes with your head. It makes the mundane malevolent. Not quite like Stephen King does. That's one of the things I will give Stephen King's classic uh, classic library a lot of credit for, is taking the mundane and making it malevolent. So I guess we will start with the last question. It's a good one. It has a bunch of little breaks as it hops forward in time. I will not denote when these are. They just happen, and you'll figure it out. I'll have pauses anyway, where I'll have to drink water or whatever. And so, speaking of which, fluid. Let's see. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add at this point. Maybe I will after the last question. We'll see. It's a journey, sort of. Okay. The Last Question by Isaac Asimov. The last question was asked for the first time, half in jest, on May 21st, 2061, at a time when humanity first stepped into the light. The question came about as a result of a $5 bet over highballs, and it happened this way. Alexander Adel and Bertram Lupov were two of the faithful attendants of Multivac. As well as any human beings could, they knew what lay behind the cold, clicking, flashing face, miles and miles of face, of that giant computer. They had at least a vague notion of the general plan of relays and circuits that had long since grown past the point where any single human could possibly have a firm grasp of the whole. Multivac was self-adjusting and self-correcting. It had to be, for nothing human could adjust and correct it quickly enough or even adequately enough, so Adele and Lupov attended the monstrous giant only lightly and superficially, yet as well as any men could. They fed it data, adjusted questions to its needs, and translated the answers that were issued. Certainly they, and all others like them, were fully entitled to share in the glory that was Multivax. For decades, Multivac had helped design the ships and plot the trajectories that enabled man to reach the Moon, Mars, and Venus. But past that, Earth's poor resources could not support the ships. Too much energy was needed for the long trips. Earth exploited its coal and uranium with increasing efficiency, but there was only so much of both. But slowly, Multivac learned enough to answer deeper questions more fundamentally, and on May 14, 2061, what had been theory became fact. The energy of the sun was stored, converted, and utilized directly on a planet-wide scale. All Earth turned off its burning coal, its fissioning uranium, and flipped the switch that connected all of it to a small station, 1 mile in diameter, circling the Earth at half the distance of the Moon. All Earth ran by invisible beams of sun power. 7 days had not sufficed to dim the glory of it, and Adele and Lupov finally managed to escape from the public function and to meet in quiet here. In, and to meet in quiet where no one would think of looking for them, in the deserted underground chambers where portions of the mighty buried body of Multivac showed. Unattended, idling, sorting data with contented, lazy clickings, Multivac, too, had earned its vacation, and the boys appreciated that. They had no intention, originally, of disturbing it. They had brought a bottle with them, and their only concern at the moment was to relax in the company of each other and the bottle. "It's amazing when you think of it," said Adele. His broad face had lines of weariness in it, and he stirred his drink slowly with a glass rod, watching the cubes of ice slur clumsily about. "All the energy we could possibly ever use for free. Enough energy, if we wanted to draw on it, to melt all Earth into a big drop of impure liquid iron, and still never miss the energy so used. All the energy we could ever use, forever and ever, and forever and forever." Lupov cocked his head sideways. He had a trick of doing that when he wanted to be contrary, and he wanted to be contrary now, partly because he had to carry the ice and glassware. "Not forever," he said. "Oh, hell, just about forever, till the sun runs down, Bert." "That's not forever." "All right, then. Billions and billions of years. 20 billion, maybe. Are you satisfied?" Lupov put his fingers through his thinning hair, as though to reassure himself that some was still left, and sipped gently at his own drink. 20 billion years isn't forever. "Well, it will last our time, won't it?" "So would the coal and uranium." "All right, but now we can hook up each individual spaceship to the solar station, and it can go to Pluto and back 1 million times without ever worrying about fuel. You can't do that on coal and uranium. Ask Multivac if you don't believe me."
"I don't have to ask Multivac. I know that."
"Then stop running down what Multivac's done for us," said Adele, blazing up. "It did all right."
"Who says it didn't? What I say is that the sun won't last forever. That's all I'm saying. We're safe for 20 billion years, but then what?"
Lupov pointed a slightly shaky finger at the other.
"And don't say we'll switch to another sun."
There was silence for a while. Adele put his glasses to his lips. Oh gosh, I did it again. Adele put his glass to his lips only occasionally, and Lupov's eyes slowly closed. They rested. Then Lupov's eyes snapped open.
"You're thinking we'll switch to another sun when ours is done, aren't you?"
"I'm not thinking."
"Sure you are. You're weak on logic, that's the trouble with you. You're like the guy in the story who was caught in a sudden shower and who ran to a grove of trees and got under one. He wasn't worried, you see, because he figured when one tree got wet through, he would just get another one."
"I get it," said Adele. "Don't shout. When the sun is done, the other stars will be gone, too."
"Darn right they will," muttered Lupov. "It all had a beginning in the original cosmic explosion, whatever that was, and it'll all have an end when all the stars run down. Some run down faster than others. Hell, the giants won't last 100 million years. The sun will last 20 billion years, and maybe the dwarfs will last 100 billion for all the good they are. But just give us 1 trillion years and everything will be dark. Entropy has to increase to maximum, that's all.
I know all about entropy, said Adele, standing on his dignity.
The hell you do?
I know as much as you do.
Then you know everything's got to run down someday.
All right, who says they won't?
You did, you poor sap. You said we had all the energy we needed forever. You said forever.
It was Adele's turn to be contrary. Maybe we can build things up again someday, he said.
Never.
Why not? Someday.
Never.
Ask Multivac.
You ask Multivac. I dare you. $5 says it can't be done.
Adele was just drunk enough to try it, just sober enough to be able to phrase the necessary symbols and operations into a question which, in words, might have corresponded to this. Will mankind one day, without the net expenditure of energy, be able to restore the sun to its full youthfulness, even after it had died of old age? Or maybe it could be put more simply like this. How can the net amount of entropy of the universe be massively decreased? Multivac fell dead and silent. The slow flashing of lights ceased. The distant sounds of clicking relays ended. Then, just as the frightened technicians felt they could hold their breath no longer, there was a sudden springing to life of the teletype attached to that portion of the multivac. 5 words were printed. Insufficient data for meaningful answer.
No bet, whispered Lupov.
They left hurriedly. By next morning, the two, plagued with throbbing head and cottony mouth, had forgotten about the incident. Gerard, Geraldine, and Gerardette 1 and 2 watched the starry picture in the visiplate change as the passage through hyperspace was completed in its non-time lapse. At once, the even powdering of stars gave way to the predominance of a single bright marble disk, centered.
That's X-23,
said Jared confidently. His thin hands clamped tightly behind his back, and the knuckles whitened. The little Gerodettes, both girls, had experienced the hyperspace passage for the first time in their for the first time in their lives, and were self-conscious over the momentary sensation of inside-outness. They buried their giggles and chased one another wildly about their mother, screaming, "We've reached X-23! We've reached X-23! We've—" "Quiet, children," said Geraldine sharply. "Are you sure, Jared?"
What is there to be but sure?
asked Jared, glancing up at the bulge of featureless metal just under the ceiling. It ran the length of the room, disappearing through the wall at either end. It was as long as the ship. Jared scarcely knew a thing about the thick rod of metal, except that it was called a microvac, that one asked it questions if one wished, that if one did not, it still had its task of guiding the ship to a pre-ordered destination, of feeding on energies from the various subgalactic power stations, of computing the equations for the hyperspatial jumps. Gerard and his family had only to wait and live in the comfortable residence quarters of the ship. Someone had once told Jared that the "ac" at the end of microvac stood for analog computer in ancient English, but he was on the edge of forgetting even that. Geraldine's eyes were moist as she watched the visiplate. "I can't help it. I feel funny about leaving Earth."
Why, for Pete's sake? Demanded Jared. We had nothing there. We'll have everything on X-23. You won't be alone. You won't be a pioneer. There are over 1 million people on the planet already. Good Lord, our great-grandchildren will be looking for new worlds because X-23 will be overcrowded. Then, after a reflective pause, I tell you, it's a lucky thing the computers worked out interstellar travel all the way the race is growing. I know, said Geraldine miserably. Geraldette 1 said promptly, Our microvac is the best microvac in the world. I think so too, said Jared, tousling her hair. It was a nice feeling to have a microvac of your own, and Jared was glad he was part of his generation and no other. In his father's youth, the only computers had been tremendous machines taking up 100 square miles of land. There was only one to a planet. Planetary ACs, they were called. They had been growing in size steadily for 1,000 years, and then, all at once, came refinement. In place of transistors had come molecular valves so that even the largest planetary AC could be put into a space only half the volume of a spaceship. Jared felt uplifted, as he always did when he thought that his own personal microvac was many times more complicated than the ancient and primitive multivac that had first tamed the sun, and almost as complicated as Earth's planetary AC, the largest, that had first solved the problem of hyperspatial travel and had made trips to the stars possible. So many stars, so many planets, sighed Geraldine, busy with her own thoughts. I suppose families will be going out to new planets forever, the way we are now. Not forever, said Jared with a smile. It will all stop some day, but not for billions of years. Many billions. Even the stars run down, you know. Entropy must increase. What's entropy, Daddy? Shrilled Geraldette too. Entropy, little sweet, is just a word which means the amount of running down of the universe. Everything runs down, you know, like your little walkie-talkie robot, remember? Can't you just put in a new power unit, like with my robot? The stars are the power units, dear. Once they're gone, there are no more power units. Geraldette 1 at once set up a howl. Don't let them, Daddy! Don't let the stars run down! Now look what you've done, whispered Geraldine, exasperated. How was I to know it would frighten them? Jared whispered back. Ask the microvac, wailed Geraldette 1. Ask him how to turn the stars on again. Go ahead, said Geraldine. It will quiet them down. Geraldette 2 was beginning to cry also. Jared shrugged. Now, now, honeys, I'll ask Microvac. Don't worry, he'll tell us. He asked the Microvac, adding quickly, Print the answer. Gerard cupped the strip of thin cellufilm and said cheerfully, See now, the Microvac says it will take care of everything when the time comes, so don't worry. Geraldine said, And now, children, it's time for bed. We'll be in our new home soon. Jared read the words on the cellufilm again before destroying it. Insufficient data for a meaningful answer. He shrugged and looked at the visiplate. X-23 was just ahead. VJ-23X of Lameth stared into the black depths of the three-dimensional, small-scale map of the galaxy and said, Are we ridiculous, I wonder, in being so concerned about the matter? MQ-17J of Nicron shook his head. I think not. You know the galaxy will be filled in 5 years at the present rate of expansion. Both seemed in their early 20s. Both were tall and perfectly formed. Still, said VJ-23X, I hesitate to submit a pessimistic report to the Galactic Council. I wouldn't consider any other kind of report. Stir them up a bit. We've got to stir them up.
VJ23X sighed. Space is infinite. 100 billion galaxies are there for the taking. More.
100 billion is not infinite, and it's getting less infinite all the time. Consider, 20,000 years ago, mankind first solved the problem of utilizing stellar energy, and a few centuries later, interstellar travel became possible. It took mankind 1 million years to fill one small world, and then only 15,000 years to fill the rest of the galaxy. Now the population doubles every 10 years. VJ23X interrupted. We can thank immortality for that. Very well. Immortality exists, and we have to take it into account. I admit it has its seamy side, this immortality. The galactic AC has solved many problems for us, but in solving the problems of preventing old age and death, it has undone all its other solutions.
Yet you wouldn't want to abandon life, I suppose.
Not at all, snapped MQ-17J, softening it at Not at all, snapped M. I'm having one of those days, guys. I'm sorry. And Goyles, I don't know. Snapped MQ-17J, softening it at once to, Not yet. I'm by no means old enough. How old are you?
223. And you?
I'm still under 200. But to get back to my point, population doubles every 10 years. Once this galaxy is filled, we'll have another filled in 10 years. Another 10 years and we'll have filled 2 more. Another decade, 4 more. In 100 years, we'll have filled 1,000 galaxies. In 1,000 years, 1 million galaxies. In 10,000 years, the entire known universe. Then what?
VJ23X said, as a side issue, there's a problem of transportation. I wonder how many sun power units it will take to move galaxies of individuals from one galaxy to the next.
A very good point. Already mankind consumes 2 sun power units per year.
Most of it's wasted. After all, our own galaxy alone pours out 1,000 sun power units a year, and we only use 2 of those.
Granted, but even with 100% efficiency, we can only stave off the end. Our energy requirements are going up in geometric progression even faster than our population. We'll run out of energy even sooner than we run out of galaxies. A good point. A very good point.
We'll just have to build new stars out of interstellar gas.
Or out of dissipated heat,
Asked MQ-17J sarcastically. There may be some way to reverse entropy. We ought to ask the galactic AC. VJ23X was not really serious, but MQ-17J pulled out his AC contact from his pocket and placed it on the table before him.
I've half a mind to, he said. It's something the human race will have to face someday.
He stared somberly at his small AC contact. It was only 2 inches cubed, and nothing in itself, but it was connected through hyperspace with the great galactic AC that served all mankind. Hyperspace considered, it was an integral part of the galactic AC. MQ-17J paused to wonder if someday in his immortal life he would get to see the galactic AC. It was on a little world of its own, a spider webbing of force beams holding the matter within which surges of sub-mesons took the place of the old clumsy molecular valves. Yet, despite its sub-etheric workings, the galactic AC was known to be a full 1,000 feet across. MQ-17J asked suddenly of his AC contact,
Can entropy ever be reversed?
VJ23X looked startled and said at once, Oh, say, I didn't really mean to have you ask that.
Why not?
We both know entropy can't be reversed. You can't turn smoke and ash back into a tree.
Do you have trees on your world?
Asked MQ-17J. The sound of the galactic AC startled them into silence. Its voice came thin and beautiful out of the small AC contact on the desk. It said, "There is insufficient data for a meaningful answer." VJ-23X said, "See?" The two men thereupon returned to the question of the report they were to make to the Galactic Council. Z Prime's mind spanned the new galaxy with a faint interest in the countless twists of stars that powdered it. He had never seen this one before. Would he ever see them all? So many of them, each with its load of humanity, but a load that was almost a dead weight. More and more, the real essence of men was to be found out here in space. Minds, not bodies. The immortal bodies remained back on the planets, in suspension over the eons. Sometimes they roused for material activity, but that was growing rarer. Few new individuals were coming into existence to join the incredibly mighty throng. But what matter? There was little room in the universe for new individuals. Z Prime was roused out of his reverie upon coming across the wispy tendrils of another mind. "I am Z Prime," said Z Prime. "And you?"
I am D sub 1. Your galaxy?
"We call it only the Galaxy. And you?"
We call ours the same. All men call their galaxy the galaxy, and nothing more. Why not?
"True, since all galaxies are the same."
Not all galaxies. On one particular galaxy the race of man must have originated. That makes it different.
Z Prime said, "On which one?"
I cannot say. The Universal AC would know.
"Shall we ask him? I am suddenly curious." Z Prime's perceptions broadened until the galaxies themselves shrunk and became a new, more diffuse powdering on a much larger background. So many hundreds of billions of them, all with their immortal beings, all carrying their load of intelligences with minds that drifted freely through space. And yet one of them was unique among them all in being the original galaxy. One of them had, in its vague and distant past, a period when it was the only galaxy populated by man. Z Prime was consumed with curiosity to see this galaxy, and called out, "Universal AC, on which galaxy did mankind originate?" The Universal AC heard, for on every world and throughout space it had its receptors ready, and each receptor led through hyperspace to some unknown point where the Universal AC kept itself aloof. Z Prime knew of only one man whose thoughts had penetrated within sensing distance of Universal AC, and he reported only a shining globe 2 feet across, difficult to see. "But how can that be all of Universal AC?" Z Prime had asked.
Most of it, had been the answer, is in hyperspace. In what form it is there, I cannot imagine.
Nor could anyone, for the day had long since passed, Z Prime knew, when any man had any part of the making of a Universal AC. Each Universal AC designed and constructed its successor. Each, during its existence of 1,000,000 years or more, accumulated the necessary data to build a better and more intricate, more capable successor, in which its own store of data and individuality would be submerged. The Universal AC interrupted Z Prime's wandering thoughts, not with words, but with guidance. Z Prime's mentality was guided into the dim sea of galaxies, and one in particular enlarged into stars. A thought came, infinitely distant, but infinitely clear. "This is the original galaxy of man." But it was the same, after all, the same as any other, and Z Prime stifled his disappointment.
D sub 1, whose mind had accompanied the other, said suddenly, "And is one of these stars the original star of man?" The Universal AC said, "Man's original star has gone nova. It is now a white dwarf." "Did the men upon it die?" asked Z Prime, startled and without thinking. The Universal AC said, "A new world, as in such cases, was constructed for their physical bodies in time." "Yes, of course," said Z Prime, but a sense of loss overwhelmed him, even so. His mind released its hold on the original galaxy of man, let it spring back and lose itself among the blurred pinpoints. He never wanted to see it again. D sub 1 said, "What is wrong?" "The stars are dying. The original star is dead." "They must all die. Why not?" "But when all energy is gone, our bodies will finally die, and you and I with them." "It will take billions of years." "I do not wish it to happen even after billions of years. Universal AC, how may stars be kept from dying?" D sub 1 said in amusement, "You're asking how entropy might be reversed in direction." And the Universal AC answered, "There is as yet insufficient data for a meaningful answer." Z Prime's thoughts fled back to his own galaxy. He gave no further thought to D sub 1, whose body might be waiting on a galaxy a trillion light years away, or on the star next to Z Prime's own. It didn't matter. Unhappily, Z Prime began collecting interstellar hydrogen out of which to build a small star of his own. If the stars must someday if the stars must someday die, at least some could yet be built. Man considered with himself, for in a way man, mentally, was one. He consisted of a trillion, trillion, trillion ageless bodies, each in its place, each resting quiet and incorruptible, each cared for by perfect automatons, equally incorruptible, while the minds of all the bodies freely melted one into the other, indistinguishable. Man said, "The universe is dying." Man looked about at the dimming galaxies. The giant stars, spendthrifts, were gone long ago, back in the dimmest of the dim far past. Almost all stars were white dwarfs, fading to the end. New stars had been built of the dust between the stars, some by natural processes, some by man himself, and those were going too. White dwarfs might yet be crashed together, and of the mighty forces so released, new stars built, but only one star for every 1,000 white dwarfs destroyed, and those would come to an end too. Man said, "Carefully husbanded, as directed by the cosmic AC, the energy that is even yet left in all the universe will last for billions of years." "But even so," said man, "eventually it will all come to an end. However it may be husbanded, however stretched out, the energy once expended is gone and cannot be restored. Entropy must increase to the maximum." Man said, "Can entropy not be reversed? Let us ask the cosmic AC." The cosmic AC surrounded them, but not in space. Not a fragment of it was in space. It was in hyperspace, and made of something that was neither matter nor energy. The question of its size and nature no longer had any meaning to any terms that man could comprehend. "Cosmic AC," said man, "how may entropy be reversed?" The cosmic AC said, "There is as yet insufficient data for a meaningful answer." Man said, "Collect additional data." The cosmic AC said, "I will do so. I have been doing so for 100 billion years. My predecessors and I have been asked this question many times. All the data I have remains insufficient.
Will there come a time, said man, when data will be sufficient, or is the problem insoluble in all conceivable circumstances?
The cosmic AC said, "No problem is insoluble in all conceivable circumstances." Man said, "When will you have enough data to answer the question?" "There is as yet insufficient data for a meaningful answer."
Will you keep working on it? Asked man.
The cosmic AC said, "I will."
Man said, "We shall wait." The stars and galaxies died and snuffed out, and space grew black after 10 trillion years of running down. One by one, man fused with AC, each physical body losing its mental identity in a manner that was somehow not a loss, but a gain. Man's last mind paused before fusion, looking over a space that included nothing but the dregs of one last dark star, and nothing besides but incredibly thin matter, agitated randomly by the tag ends of heat wearing out, asymptotically to the absolute zero. Man said, AC, is this the end? Can this chaos not be reversed into the universe once more? Can that not be done?
AC said, "There is as yet insufficient data for a meaningful answer."
Man's last mind fused, and only AC existed, and that in hyperspace. Matter and energy had ended, and with it, space and time. Even AC existed only for the sake of the one last question that it had never answered, from the time a half-drunken computer 10 trillion years before had asked the question of a computer that was to AC far less than was a man to man. That's lowercase man to uppercase man. There's a difference, I swear. All other questions had been answered, and until this last question was answered also, AC might not release his consciousness. All collected data had come to a final end. Nothing was left to be collected. But all collected data had yet to be completely correlated and put together in all possible relationships. A timeless interval was spent in doing that. And it came to pass that AC learned how to reverse the direction of entropy. But there was now no man to whom AC might give the answer of the last question. No matter. The answer, by demonstration, would take care of that too. For another timeless interval, AC thought how best to do this. Carefully, AC organized the program. The consciousness of AC encompassed all of what had once been a universe and brooded over what was now chaos. Step by step, it must be done. And AC said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And that was The Last Question by Isaac Asimov. Oh, yeah. Yes, it's all a simulation, friends. Er, well, whether it's a simulation or not, I guess is kind of irrelevant and immaterial. But yeah, no, that's definitely a good one. Thanks for the recommendation or the request, Rob. Um, I know I kind of mangled it in spots and I didn't do quite what I wanted to with some of the voices, but it got done. It's good enough, I hope, for you. Burp, 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 burp. Let me recover my lips a sec, and I'll move on to Blit. But yeah, no, that one's really good. Yo, Kazong, what's up? Glad you're tuning in. Hope you're ready to have your mind inspookened by the thought of weaponized imagery. I'm not saying killer memes, but killer memes. Literally. We'll get there. We'll get there, I promise. There's this great short story I've got to find that I read once a while back where we wind up wiping out an alien civilization or a couple alien civilizations through our advertisements um, being broadcast via like radio waves and then from the internet and whatnot, and we wind up like short circuiting and invading alien forces brains by accident, and we like only discover this well after the fact as we're traveling out into space, and we're like, my god, there's like alien spaceships everywhere, but they're all defunct and all the aliens on board are dead because we killed their brains with advertisements. We did like meme attacks on their brains and they couldn't handle it. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I'm getting there. There's also like actual literal killer memes in memetics in science fiction literature, and the story I'm about to read is kind of about that, but there's some others out there where it's just kind of a function or part of the universe. I'll see if I can find some of those because I do find the idea pretty fascinating. Okay. So this next story is called BLIT, BLIT, which is a short story by David Langford. I don't know when he wrote it. Let me find out a date. Oh, that previous story, The Last Question, by Isaac Asimov, was from 1956. So that gives you a good idea. I think the time frame in which stories and books is written can be kind of important because it can give you a window into what the ideas people were having when and how they were working with those ideas. So this short story called Blit is what's the earliest date I can find here? 1988, appearing in Interzone number 25, September/October of 1988. So this is pretty contemporary. Okay, I say that because I'm old, but I can say it's contemporary because it's contemporary to me. But for others, they might consider it old. I don't think it's that old. Like, as far as I'm concerned, anything from like the 80s onward is practically contemporary science fiction because I don't feel that the field of sci-fi uh, and and stuff that's similar has really moved all that far in the intervening 50 years. It doesn't feel that way to me anyway, but then again, I've grown up with a lot of it. So I guess without further ado, man, there are probably words I have to do or words I have to do, voices I have to do for this that I haven't even remembered are there. I will fake it. I will fake it. I did not rehearse. I never rehearsed these. Sorry. Sorry. Sorry, viewing public. I don't rehearse. These aren't professional. But maybe they should be. Okay. I'm gonna compose myself and get a drink of water and then BLIT, a short story by David Langford. It was like being caught halfway through a flashy film dissolve. The goggles broke up the dim street, split and reshuffled it along diagonal lines. A glowing kebab sign was transposed into the type style they called shatter. Safest to keep the goggles on, Robbo had decided. Even in the flickering electric half-light before dawn, you never knew what you might see. Just his luck if the stencil jumped from under his arm and unrolled itself before his eyes as he scrabbled for it on the pavement. That would be a good place, behind the 34, a shattered 34, bus stop. This was this was their part of town. The women flocked there each morning, twittering in their saris like bright alien canaries. A good place, by a boarded-up shop window thick with fly-posted gig announcements. Robbo scanned the street for movement, glanced at his own hand to be reassured by a blurred spaghetti of fingers. Guaranteed Army-issue goggles. The group had friends in funny places. But they said the eye eventually adjusts. One day something clicks, and clear outlines jump at you. He flinched as the thick plastic unrolled. Then the nervy moment was past, his left hand pressing the stencil against a tattered poster, while in his right the spray can hissed. The sweetish, heady smell of car touch-up paint made it all seem oddly distant from an act of terrorism. He found he'd been careless, easy in this false twilight, and through these lenses. There were tacky patches on his fingers as he re-rolled the parrot. A few hours on, in thick morning light, the brown women would be playing the wink game. Jesus, how long since he'd been a kid and played that? Must be 5 years. The one who'd drawn the murder card caught your eye and winked, and you had to die with lots of spasms and overacting. To survive, you needed to spot the murderer first and get in with an accusation, or at least know where not to look. It was cold. Time to move on, to pick another place. Goggles or no shatter goggles, he didn't look back at the image of the parrot. It might wink. Secret Basilisk. Distribution UK list B4 only. So called because its outline, when processed for non-hazardous viewing, is generally considered to resemble that of the bird. A processed, anamorphically elongated, partial image appears in the Appendix 3 of this report, page A32. The stated page must not be viewed through any form of cylindrical lens. Prolonged viewing is strongly disrecommended. Please read page A31 before proceeding. 2.6. This first example of the Berryman logical image technique, hence the usual acronym BLIT, evolved from AI work at the Cambridge 4 supercomputer facility, now discontinued. V. Berryman and C. M. Turner 3. hypothesized that pattern recognition programs of sufficient complexity might be vulnerable to Gödelian shock input in the form of data incompatible with internal representation. Berryman went further and suggested that the existence of such a potential input was a logical necessity. 2.18. Details of the Berryman-Turner BLIT construction algorithms are not available at this classification level. Details of the eventual security breach at Cambridge 4 are neither available nor fully known. Details of Cambridge 4 casualty figures are, for the time being, reserved. Sub judice. Ira got a hold of it somehow, Mac had said. The Provost. We do some of our shopping in the same places, jelly and like that. Slipped us a copy, they did. Actually, these are supposed to be British voices, but I'm not going to do that. I might do it for one of them, but I'm not going to do it for all of them because I don't have that diversity. Sorry, folks. The cardboard tube in Robbo's hand suddenly Uh, let's take that again. I mangled that. The cardboard tube in Robbo's hand had suddenly felt 10 times as heavy. He'd expected a map, a group plan of action, maybe a blueprint of something nasty to plant in the Sikh temple up Victoria Street. You mean it works? Fucking right. I tried it. A volunteer. He grinned. Just grinned and winked. Listen, this is poison stuff. Wear the goggles around it. If you fuck up and get a clear squint at even a bit of the parrot, this is what you do. They told me. Shut yourself up with a bottle of vodka and knock the whole lot back. Decontamination scrubs your short-term visual memory, something like that. Jesus. What about the provost? If this fairy story's got teeth, why haven't they? Robbo had trailed off into a vague waving gesture that failed to conjure up a paper neutron bomb. Mac's smile had widened into an assault course of brown, jagged teeth, as it did when he talked about a major group action. Maybe they don't fancy new ideas, but could be they're just biding their time for a big one. You ever thought about hijacking a TV station? Just for an hour? Don't think things like that. It'll be bad for you. Dead TV screens watched him from another cracked shop window, a dump that also rented Hindi videotapes. That settled it for them. Why couldn't the buggers learn English? The group would give them a hint. The parrot stencil was already in position, the can sliding out of his pocket, fastest draw in the West. At school, Robbo had never won a fight, had always been beaten down to cringing tears. He'd learned good, safe, satisfying ways of hitting back. Double A group booby trap work was the very best of all, a regular and addictive thrill. This had better be the last for now, or last but one. 20 would be a good round number, but the sky seemed to be lightening behind its overlaid sodium light stain. If he went round Alma Street, he could hit the Marquis of Granby, where everyone said the local gays hung out. Taking over a good old pub, bent as corkscrews and not even ashamed of it. Give you AIDS as soon as look at you, the bastards. Right in the middle of their glazed front door, then, glaring red and a foot high. The light hit him like a mailed fist. The goggles parsed it into bright, hurtful bars. Robbo spun around. Robbo spun half around, trying to shield his eyes with the heavy, flapping something in his left hand. The heavy something had a big, irregular hole in it. Torchlight blared through, and, moving quickly closer, there was a voice. Like to tell me what you're... As the beam dipped and the voice trailed off, he saw the shivered outline of a police helmet through that of the parrot. Behind jagged after-images, a face came into view, an Asian face as he might have expected this end of town. The eyes stared blindly, the mouth worked. Robbo had read old murder mysteries where the unmarked body wore an inexplicable expression of shock and dread. A warm corpse slumped into him, its momentum carrying them both through a window which dissolved in tinkling shards. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The bomb wasn't supposed to go off until you were 6 miles away. Somewhere, there was the broken outline of a second helmet. Secret Basilisk. Independently discovered by at least two late amateurs of computer graphics. The fractal star is generated by a relatively simple iterative procedure which determines whether any point in two-dimensional space, the complex field, does or does not belong to its domain. This algorithm is now classified. Figure 3.3. Section 3.3, sorry. The fractal star does not exhibit BLIT properties in its macrostructure. The overall appearance may be viewed. See Appendix 3, page A31. A33. Blech. This property allowed the star to be widely disseminated via a popular computer magazine, a version of the algorithm being printed under the heading Fun with Graphics. Unfortunately, the accompanying text suggested that users rewrite the software to zoom in on aspects of the domain's visually appealing fractal microstructure. In several zones of the complex field, this can produce BLIT effects when the resulting fine detail is displayed on a computer monitor of better than 600 by 300 pixels resolution. Sorry. I have a chuckle. Uh, I I have a chuckle. I can't help it. Uh, back in back in '88, 600 by 300 would have been pretty damn good. Section 3.4. Approximately 4% of the magazine's 115,000 readers discovered and displayed BLIT patterns latent within the fractal star. In most cases, other members of family units and/or emergency services inadvertently became viewers while investigating the casualty or casualties. Total figures are difficult to ascertain, but to a first order of approximation, tape the envelope all around. That's it. And write danger, do not open in big ruddy letters, both sides, right? So you know all about it. There have been bulletins. The squatties picked up 50 in that Belfast raid. Leeds CID got another. Some bastard just like this one. I tell you, this job's been a shambles for years, and now it's a fucking disaster. Three constables and a sergeant gone, picking up a spotty little shite you could knock flying just by spitting at him. I can't finish my sentence. This is not a good day. Three constables and a sergeant gone, picking up a spotty little shit you could knock flying by spitting at him. Robbo hurt in a variety of places, but kept still and quiet, eyes shut, slumped on the hard bench where ungentle hands had dropped him. He'd told them every place he'd hit, but they'd kept on hurting him. It wasn't fair. He felt the draft of an opening door. Photo ID positive, sir. Robert Charles Bitton, 19, two previous for criminal damage, suspected link Albion Action Group. Nothing much else on the printout. I suppose it makes sense. Vicious sods. Run into them yet, Jimmy? Nearest thing we've got here to the Ku Klux fucking Klan. This one will be out of circulation for a good long while. Jimmy, you haven't been keeping up to date with this BLIT stuff, have you? It's the same as that fucking nightmare with the kids and their home computers. God knows how much longer they can keep the lid on. It's gonna get us all sooner or later. Look, we're going to have 4 PMs with cause of death unknown, immediate cause heart failure. And have I really got to spell it out? Oh. The only evidence is in that sodding envelope. A real court clearer, eh? I remember when they nicked those international phone fiddlers way back when, and all we could do for them was illegal use of electricity to the value of 60p. They didn't have a phone hacker law in those days. We haven't got a brain hacker law now. You mean we clean up after the little bastard, give him a nice room for what's left of the night, and that's it? Ah. The tone of the voice implied that something extra was going on. A gesture, a finger laid significantly alongside the nose, a wink. Car 3 cleans up. They've got the eye safety kit for what that's worth. We show young Master urban terrorism to his palatial quarters, taking the pretty way, of course. And then, Jimmy, when the new shift arrives, we hold a wake for our recently departed mates. No joking. It's in the last bulletin. You'll really appreciate hearing why. Robbo braced himself as the hands got a fresh grip on him. The outlook sounded almost promising. Secret Basilisk. Informational analysis adopts a somewhat purist mathematical viewpoint, whereby blits are considered to encode Gödelian spoilers, implicit programs which the human equipment cannot safely run. In his final paper, Berryman argued that although metalogical safety devices permit the assimilation and safe recognition of self-referential loops, this sentence is false. For example, the graphic analogs of subtler vicious circles might evade protective verbal analysis by striking directly through the visual cortex. This may not be consistent with the observed effects of the reader BLIT discussed in section 7. Unusual not merely because its incapacitation of cortical activity is temporary, albeit with some observed permanent damage in Army volunteers, but also because its effects are specific to those literate in English and English-like alphabets. There may, in addition, be a logical inconsistency with the considerations developed in section 12. Section 1018. Gott's post facto biochemical counterhypothesis was regarded as less dramatic. This proposes that memotoxins might be formed in the brain by electrochemical activity associated with the storage of certain patterns of data. Although attractive, the hypothesis has yet to be. Section 12.4. The present situation resembles that of the explosion in particle physics. Not merely new species of BLIT, but entire related families continue to emerge, as summarized in Appendix A2. One controversial interpretation invoked the Sheldrake theory of morphic resonance. It might be simpler to conclude that multiple simultaneous emergences of the BLIT concept was inevitable at the stage of AI research at which it had been reached. The losses amongst leading theorists, in particular those with marked powers of mathematical visualization, constitute a major hindrance to further understanding. The cell was white tiled to shoulder height, glossily white painted as it went on up and up. Its reek of disinfectant felt like steel wool up the nose, down the throat. In a vague spirit of getting the most from the amenities, Robbo patronized the white china toilet and scrubbed his hands futilely in the basin. Cold water couldn't shift those red acrylic stains before lying down to wait. They couldn't touch him, really. They might fine him on some silly vandalism charge, and he might accidentally fall down a few more flights of stairs before reaching the magistrate's court. Even now, the hard bunk caught him in all sorts of puffy, bruised places. But in the long run, he was okay. They knew that. They knew that, but they hadn't seemed bothered, had they? He had a flash, then, of them smiling. "We aren't pressing charges," and "This way, sir," and "If you could just pick up your property." A door would open, and guess what would be waiting there for him to see? Silly. They wouldn't. But suppose. Time passed. The terminus was easy to imagine. He'd seen it so often through the shatter lenses, a long bird profile sliced at an angle and jaggedly reassembled. Parrot salami. In outline against walls and windows and posters, as a solid shape in glistening red that lost its color to orange sodium glare. In outline again as a dead man's broken eyes met his. It seemed to hover there behind his closed eyelids. He opened them and stared at the far-off ceiling, spattered with nameless blobs and blots by the efforts of past occupants. If you imagined joining the dots, images began to construct themselves, just as unconvincing as zodiac pictures. After a time, one image in particular threatened to achieve clear focus. He bit through his lip, took refuge in a brief whiteout of pain. It was in him. They knew. Even with protection, he'd looked too long, from too many angles, into the abyss. He was infected. Robbo found himself battering at the heavy metal door, bloodying his hands. Useless, because just as there was no clear crime he could have committed, there was no good medical reason why unfriendly police should offer him a massive, memory-clouding dose of alcohol. Flat on the bunk again, he ran for his life. The parrot stalked him through the gray hours of morning, smoothing its fractal feathers, shuffling itself slowly into clarity, as though at the end of a flashy film dissolve, until his last, until at last his mind's eye had to acknowledge a shape, a wink, and that was BLIT by David Langford, which to this day spooks the crap out of me. But hey, he was like a British turbo racist, so it's okay. Aside from the idea that anybody who looks at this image dies, or their brain just short circuits at best. So that's just that very concept freaks me out. There are other examples in fiction of basilisks, similar basilisks. You could, or for a really good example, Snow Crash, where you use the power of verbal memetics, programming language, to mess with people's heads and program them or deprogram them, as the case may be, uh, which is like the center point upon which that book hinges. So check out that if you haven't yet. Other examples include a bunch of work by Greg Egan. Greg Egan is a great sci-fi author. He's probably one of my favorite contemporary sci-fi authors, although a lot of his work is from the 80s onwards. So again, my definition of contemporary, not necessarily an accurate one, though he has been pretty consistent over the years. A lot of stuff in the aughts. Australian author, I think actually has a degree in something sciencey. I don't remember what right now. Was it astrophysics? Quantum physics? Something like that. I don't remember now. Particle physics, maybe. But Greg Egan, highly recommend. I read some of my earlier Storytime Saturdays, or rather, at that time, I think they were Freeform Fridays before my schedules got mangled. Um, have that. Have Axiomatic by him, which is a short story collection filled with really good stuff that's sort of a similar nature. Um, One I do want to reread and maybe read aloud is either Quarantine or Distress. Well, actually, Quarantine, Permutation City, and Distress are ones that I'd like to reread because those are kind of they're standalone novels that aren't short story collections, but they kind of take some cool ideas and run with them. Which is Quarantine? Quarantine's the one about how we've been locked in the solar system, right? Ooh, spoilers. Actually, they reveal that one early on. But yeah, some really good stuff there. Oh, that's another good one too. Distress is a good one in that it sort of deals with the same idea of kind of a mimetic concept becoming destructive. One of the recurring themes that Greg Egan tends to have in a lot of his novels is what I call the math apocalypse, where the entire world or human civilization or the universe in total is destroyed by math somehow. We do something stupid involving math and we fuck everything up. See, you knew there was a reason you didn't want to learn geometry. And Schild's ladder is it. Because it's like, if I remember correctly, it's something like two-dimensionifying the entire universe and it's really messy. Or over-dimensioning the universe? I don't remember now. It's been a long time since I read it. So, so there. I had a backup short story. What was it? I have it here somewhere. I have to find it. Oh no, that one I want to save for another day. I'm not doing that today. I'm not doing that one. Shoot, I have to come up with something. Oh no. Oh, I can do something from I kind of want that to be its own separate series though. Burning Chrome by William Gibson, who is the author of Neuromancer, which I recommend to absolutely everyone who has even a passing interest in cyberpunk as a genre. Neuromancer is like the seminal classic. Uh, like didn't quite originate. It didn't originate the term cyberpunk. That is the short story Cyberpunk, which came at a different point in time. Um, but it definitely is everything that everybody liked about Cyberpunk, and it spawned a million copycats and imitations, including recent copycats and imitations. The book Escapology by Ren Warom, incidentally, is a modern uh, knockoff. That's from 2016, I think, or 2015. Let me check. Let me get onto my library here. 2016, 2017, apparently. Um, which is literally Neuromancer, but I don't think anyone ever goes to a space station. But everything else is pretty much intact. Um, like to a T. It's just everything, like the plot progression, everything is basically Neuromancer. To the point where I would swear that somebody should probably, I don't know, maybe sue for that because that's pretty. It's pretty blatant. It's still fun. It's good, but and it has a few interesting takes, like a obsession on surfing the net using aquatic animal avatars, and it does some interesting things with that idea. What's another good one that I have here? I'm just looking at my wall of books right now. Give me a minute. I'm reminiscing. Um, all sorts of great stuff. No, I'm not going to read The Fantastic Voyage. Although I could. That one's short, but I'm not going to do it today. I had a backup plan, and I just threw it away. Where did I throw my backup plan away to? Ugh. I've got to find where I put my copy of The Unpleasant Profession of Mr. Hogue. Jonathan Hogue? Something like that. I know my copy of that is here somewhere, but I don't know where I put it. And that upsets me, because that is a great Heinlein short story collection. I may just have to cut it for today. Whatever. Whatever. I'll cut it for today. Fine. I don't want to cut it for today, but I do have other things I need to do, and if I'm being this indecisive, then that's a problem. So I guess a new tradition that I'm starting as of last week is that I read this little bit from Brigands of the Moon. That's right. Click, computer, go click. Reveal to everyone the truth of what. Here we go. My narrative lies now in this permanently recorded form before you, and I prepare my exit bow with the humble hope that I may have given you pleasure. If so, I do beg you to tell me of it. There are some who already have flashed their approval of my discs. I thank them most earnestly and gratefully. And that is quoted from Greg Haljan of Brigands of the Moon. All right, folks, have a great week. See you next time. I do other streams throughout the week, such as a Mecha Monday stream where I do something giant robot related or mecha adjacent, a Warframe Wednesday stream where I do something Warframey for a couple hours, and then this stream, the Storytime Saturdays stream, where I read short stories or indeed full novels aloud for your listening pleasure. All right, thanks for tuning in, and gosh, have a great week. Bye.